Hello everyone, greetings from the 7th of Nero. AJ here to give some quick first impressions for the preview build of the Monsternomicon that was distributed to the KickStarter backers in the lead up to the full release later this year. I was pleasantly surprised to wake up to this email. I say wake up because time zones as usual. First off, I just wanted to say that based on the sneak peeks that we got during the Kickstarter campaign, everything looked as one would expect, with a polished aesthetic and art style that has crispness that reflects the artwork we came to expect from Privateer Press products, such as the War Machine and Hordes expansion books of Mark II. This is in contrast to the original IKRPG style of art and the early War Machine artwork, which, for lack of a better way of putting it, given that I'm no art critic, is seemingly much rougher around the edges, if only because of the evolution of the illustrative medium from physical to digital, as far as I am aware of it. Though there is a perception of it getting gradually crisper and busier, as it were, as more supplemental material was released, particularly the second volume of the Monsternomicon. The content of the Monsternomicon for Requiem is much in line with the previews released before, though there are a few concept art-like pieces, so in terms of accompanying artwork, it combines the aesthetic of both previous iterations and uses both styles to good effect, though many of the images should be familiar to players already, along with a few completely new pieces. The bestiary is also largely adapted from previous Monsternomicons, many of whom make a return after an absence from the 2D6 Full Metal Fantasy official releases. However, there are a fair few new entries, some from models added relatively recently to the War Machine and Hordes line of miniatures, such as the Archons. Some are expansions on creature types bringing new variants, such as the Pharaoh Giants and the new forms of Devil Rat, while some further still are a bit of both, namely the Infernal Horror lineup, along with a few Grimkin and Cephalix. As with all things though, what can be given can also be taken away, and there are a few omissions, such as the Bogrin and Gallows Grove amongst others. However, it is not unreasonable to expect additional entries to be provided to players with expansions and Privateer Press Insider articles, as has been done in the past, or similar. As far as the entries themselves go, an interesting touch is that the dragons have no stat and ability blocks, just lore, and quite a lot of it at that. There's already been a bit of discussion over this, but personally, for occupation of space and practicality of involving dragons in one's campaigns, I'm in favour of this change, at least from the 3rd ed D&D materials, as there were no stat blocks for dragons during the Full Metal Fantasy 2D6 iteration of IKRPG. This document continues the trend wherein the Monsternomicon is framed as one Professor Victor Prendrake's collected notes and writings on the innumerable expeditions he's led and the encounters he's had with the wilder of Imoran's denizens. As a result, there are a great many notes written by him that supplement the background information and the rules. In an upgrade to before, though, the Pendrake notes are added to the Monsternomicon in the manner of footnotes or scribbles in the margin that provide with more character, rather than the, at times, dry header quote from the 2D6 FFMF Monsternomicon. While many of these notes are merely amusing quips, though, a lot of them also provide interesting little tidbits that GMs can play around with. Among them are a few provided by his student, Linus Vesselbaum, along with a rather telling message from Adrea Laurier, and I'd be curious to hear reactions to it from Retribution of Syra players or those interested and invested in the lore of Ias, as concerns her somewhat fatalistic thoughts on the state of the Elven Pantheon. Nevertheless, given the selection of the admittedly very large quantity of available enemies, beasts and monsters that could have been put into the Monsternomicon, it's covered all the major angles fairly neatly. Given the aforementioned sheer quantity, it was always going to be difficult to decide what to leave out. Thus, all told, I'm liking the look of Requiem thus far, and look forward to what the other 2 books in this release hold for adventurers in the Iron Kingdoms. Bring on the Player Handbook.